Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Hammond, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We are, of course, a Blue Wire podcast. Joining me today, Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you?
Good, doing good. Nothing all too crazy on my end. I had a little in and out earlier, and I will say that I've never been a big in and out guy, but recently buns have been really soft. It's cooked well. I'm all about some soft buns. It was great. Is
He's
all I'm
talking
saying.
in,
So
out, and soft buns like right
yeah,
off the jump.
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm a little intimidated to talk to who you're going to introduce next. That looks like a supervillain right now.
He does kind of look like a supervillain. I don't know. He's got kind of rosy cheeks going.
I
That is, of
know.
course, Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
I'm good. Let me see if I can get this light any closer
Oh.
to me. Yeah, this is an odd setup, and hopefully it'll be by the next time we do this, it'll be a little bit different. But here's the thing: if I went like this, I think you can see it's not that well. That didn't really work. Sorry, but it's really not that dark of a room. It's just kind of dark back there. I don't know.
What were you trying to
I'm
prove with that
struggling.
movement?
I don't know.
I noticed that when I was setting it up, and for the video listener, the audio listener doesn't really give a shit. But I was trying to get the lighting to work, and it was actually light back there. But when my face blocking this screen kind of adjusted in the iris level, and so it blacked out everything behind me. So we're making it work. We're making it go. It'll be decorated soon. Yeah, it's up to you guys. Actually, did you get animal? Did you do animal fries or well done?
I didn't really get fries, but if I do, I get them well done. Because
you gotta do it
that's
well
the one thing about In-N-Out. Fries, pretty meh. You have to get them well done or they're too soggy.
Yep.
I'm a big, McDonald's fries, and actually a very underrated fry for what it's worth is KFC fries. Actually season them.
What?
They're very good. Just saying, you never would think it, but they're pretty good.
Okay.
I'm not a McDonald's fan, but James, I'll have you know, since we last had a podcast, I had to go up to your literal neck of the woods, not Bear River High School, but I was at Placer High School. And I finally ran into somebody, because every time I talk to somebody up there, I'll ask them, I'll go, tell me about Taco Tree. Or at this point I go, Taco Tree or Taco Bell? And no one ever says Taco Bell. But I found someone that said Taco Bell.
What?
And he is a stud for Placer High School. So go check him. I don't want to put his name on blast, but I'll give him that.
Okay.
His coach, his longtime coach, Joey Montoya, who's the varsity football coach of Placer High School, he immediately shamed him.
I can't imagine, because a lot of the kids from Placer, they have an open campus. They're allowed to walk down to Taco Tree. There's a Taco Tree hidden over by the stadium. The Taco Tree I go to is out on 49 by Dry Creek. So it's further down, like sort of on the main throughway as you're heading to my house. But yeah, I don't believe him. I don't believe that he thinks it taco. And this comes from I love Taco Bell. No, Taco Tree is just a far superior dining experience. So anyway, random. What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us. We are not doing a live show. We just have too much going on and it's chaotic. And what is tomorrow? Tomorrow is Halloween. So everything's going wild and it's just very complicated and all over the place. But we do have a lot to talk about. We have Sacramento Kings picking up a pair of wins this last time we convened. But let's just start with the business stuff. Number one, if you're watching here on YouTube and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. Go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber so you get everything sent right to your inbox. Give us a rating review wherever you watch your podcasts. And if you don't mind, we're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers. That's our goal here on YouTube. So subscribe to the show. We would greatly appreciate it. And that way you get alerted every time the show goes live and you can see some of our live shows. Let's just, this game one, game two, not great. The Sacramento Kings fell, but it was only by 6 points. We had a podcast after that. But where are you guys at with what we've seen over the last 2 days, the last two games, which is realistically the last 2 days, the back-to-back where the Kings beat the Blazers, beat Utah, but just like the general vibe of the team seems to have improved greatly and they look pretty solid. So we'll start with you, Sean. What do you got for us?
Well, I think they look like a team who's just kind of going through the early portion of the season. I was talking to a few people, and inevitably, whether a team gets hot out of the gate or even kind of stumbles out of the gate when the start of the season, they kind of always blame the preseason and the way it's set up and how you go a week of preseason and then all of a sudden you're right into your preseason schedule of games, those exhibition games, and you get 5 of them, and it almost kind of gets in the way in a lot of ways for teams that are even familiar with one another. But when you're trying to incorporate a new thing like the Kings are in terms of going from a few different voices in the coaching ranks, different defensive coordinator in Luke Laux, and even somebody with like Jay Triano, who has been pretty consistent with what the way you run offensively. There's a lot of things that are just adjusting, and every team goes through them. And I think in that first game against the Timberwolves, if Keegan Murray hits that shot, everything feels a lot different going into game two. They drop game two. In a lot of ways, not from a talent standpoint or a win-loss standpoint, but in a lot of ways, there's similarities between the Timberwolves and the Lakers in terms of length and the things that bother the Kings and give them problems. And um, I think certainly there wasn't really a point until that 21-0 run that I thought the Kings would lose that game, and then they lost that game. But in both games, they really had opportunities. Obviously, you had the shot to win the game against Minnesota. You missed. You're feeling a little bit down. You get down against the Lakers. There's a lot to pick apart, and even Mike Brown is, I think, almost too honest in his assessment of how he looks at the team and his kind of pulling his hair that he doesn't have out to try to figure out rotations and minutes and how to keep guys like Sabonis, Fox, and DeRozan away from 35 minutes plus. But then you get 2 games against two, let's face it, it's just calling a spade, those are 2 bad teams in the West, and there's not a lot of bad teams in the West. And they
They're
were able to
bad.
do what they were able to do what they're supposed to do. And I think that game against Portland, where it was really gross and a kind of a sloppy kind of slog of a game, where that first half I was ready to go home at halftime.
I
I
wanted
thought
a
DeMar
nap.
DeRozan, yeah, I thought
Yeah.
DeMar DeRozan's shot to beat the buzzer was about the most exciting thing we'd seen all that half, and I was like, let's just end it right there. And I think both teams would have probably been okay with that. But the second half was a little bit more exciting. They kind of figured some things out, and I think they're 2-2 now after that win in Utah. And I feel like they're a team that is exactly what we thought going in. They're going to be an elite offensive team. They're still trying to figure some things out. I think they will be a I don't think poor defensive team is going to be, I still don't think that's what they're going to be, but I think they're going to find moments of struggles on the defensive end. But you're 2-2. I think people are feeling a lot better, and they're in this midst of a really odd, crazy type of road trip.
Horrible road trip. Brenden, what do you got?
Yeah, I think pretty well said by Sean. I mean, those are the 2 worst teams in the West. I feel pretty comfortable in saying that, and the teams that you should be beating. But last year, that was a bit of an issue for the Kings. They didn't take care of business against, you can go Portland, Charlotte, Washington. You can kind of go down the line. And that's one of the areas I thought DeRozan would help a bit, is just making sure that you can win the games that you're supposed to. And so far, that's held true. I think, like Sean said, the Portland game was a gross experience, but I felt like the Kings were in control the whole time. Partially felt like a super long game because DeMar DeRozan just won't stop getting to the free throw line, which is good for the Kings. And the refs love him, by the way. I got to say, there's some kind whistles in there. And then De'Aaron does the same thing and doesn't get the call. And I'm like, I don't know if that should mean that DeMar shouldn't have got that, or if De'Aaron should get that one, or whatever the case may be. But took care of business. And I would say that the third quarters that they had in both of these games to really put the team away that they're clearly superior to was really encouraging, because I think they tried to do the same thing against the Timberwolves. They had a decent lead at halftime, tried to put them away in the third quarter, and Mike Brown talked about that after the game, about how they kind of were sloppy in doing so, and then Minnesota went on their own run and came back into that game. So I think really cementing these wins by pretty much the end of the third quarter, maybe halfway through the fourth for both of them, was convincing. It wasn't a down to the wire, oh, you beat them, you're supposed to, but you barely did. No, these were convincing. The Stars look like how they're supposed to. I think Kevin Huerter's been getting back into a good swing of things. And so you took care of business against the teams you're supposed to, but couldn't always say that last year. So I would say it's a positive so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the biggest thing. Last season, they lost to bad teams. They had at least 4 egregious losses because the one you missed was Detroit. So yeah, Charlotte, Detroit, uh, Washington, and Portland. They lost games to those guys. And if you're a team who thinks you're really good or elite, I mean, realistically, there's a difference between you being 46 wins and winning 50. And that's a big deal. It's a difference between you making the playoffs and you not making the playoffs. And so hopefully they're taking it more serious. I'd like point to 2 years ago when they won 48 games and they like sort of came on out of nowhere. They didn't lose to bad teams at all. Like the whole season, I think there might have been like one game that we could point to where they let one slip by. And I thought that that was a very good sort of trait of the team. And where we're at now, I would like to see that trait be, part of who the culture, who sort of the feel of this team is, that they don't lose to bad teams. They're going to get plenty of opportunity here to prove that they aren't going to lose to bad teams because they play a bunch more bad teams in the next week. But they're on the road. We have no idea how that's all going to work out.
Can I
Um,
ask Sean something that we
oh
touched on in the last episode, James, and Sean wasn't around for?
yeah,
Big topic, obviously, was Keon not playing in that game against the Lakers. He plays against Portland. He came out pretty early against Utah. I thought had a really good game. And one of those, he ended up winning Defensive Player of the Game crown as well. But Sean, what was your reaction? I'm curious to Keon not playing, and then now he's finally back in, but kind of just Mike Brown's decision making there.
Yeah, I was shocked. Look, I'm not, and I always tell people, you not to pat ourselves on the back, but if you listen to this podcast, you learn some things because I was not shocked that Kevin Herter was starting. I told you he'd start. I told you he'd start for greater part of the year. If at the end of the year I didn't think maybe he would start game one just because of some of the preseason stuff, but I think if Kevin Hart, I've said it all along, if Kevin Herter's on this team, you want him at his best. You want him at his most confident. He stretches the floor with that lineup. Spacing is so incredibly important on this team. And let's face it, guys, Keon Ellis didn't set the world on fire in the opportunities he was given in the preseason. I think he still brings it on the defensive end, but I think again they want guys that are going to be two-way players, and they wanted to give Kevin Herter the opportunity to get his spot back and put him back with the group that he plays the best with. And they're able to do that. And again, I'm not a big guy on, who starts or whatever. I mean, Malik Monk is basically part of the core of this team and comes off the bench. We've known that. We know that of all the people on this team, he understands his role the most. But yeah, but to that point, I didn't think that Keon Ellis not only would come off the bench, and I think in that first game only play like a handful of minutes and then go to not playing at all in the Lakers game. To me, he has to be a part of the rotation. I think for what they're trying to do defensively, for the way he can play with guys like Malik Monk and really even with Kevin Herter on the floor, we saw that in moments where Kevin Herter and Keon Ellis are playing together in the Portland game. They had DeMar DeRozan playing the 4, and it was some interesting lineups. But certainly, I think Keon Ellis has a role in this team that is no longer the two-way player that he was a year ago. And yeah, he may not be a starter, but I got to see this guy play upwards of 20 minutes. And I do think he's going to have a little bit of a short leash, that if he doesn't have it on one end or someone really has it going, he may not get extended minutes, but I think you have to get him a 15-minute rotation at bare minimum.
yeah. Like I'm going to add to that too because, like, look, I think it's really difficult for Mike Brown to like navigate this situation. You have a player who was your starter. He was your starter when you won 48 games. He was your starter, most of the season last year when you won 46. I think they finished 7-8 to end the season without Kevin Herter. But there is the old adage that you don't lose your job because you got injured. And Kevin Herter is still a young guy. He's under contract for this year and next year. He makes a lot of money, not astronomical money, but he makes a lot of money. And for me, the best version of the Kings is Kevin Herter as one of your 7 best players. And I don't care if it's on the bench or as a starter. I don't really care. What matters is that he's in the right frame of mind and that as a coach, you've got to figure out how to get him in the right frame of mind and how to keep him there, and do the best you can to like have it be a positive, have him be a positive, right? And so I think that it's jarring for everybody because Keon started all through the preseason. But I agree with Sean, and we talked about it the other day, Brendan. I don't think he played well at all. It was a bunch of grab fouls. He was always in foul trouble. He wasn't fighting through the screen like he normally did. He didn't have his bounce in his legs at all. And then we get to like game one, and I didn't really he didn't stand out at all in a positive way. I think when he didn't start, I mean, when he didn't get to play at all, it was super jarring. But I also understand like they were trying to shrink the rotation and get this thing going. And the way that this team is going to be good is if Kevin Herter is at his best, just like everybody else. But Kevin Herter has an ability to really change some of the trajectory of this team, in my opinion. And so I feel bad for Keon, but the thing that I liked is that he came out in last night's game against Utah, and he looked like Keon Ellis. He looked like the player that we got so used to at the end of last season. He dove on the floor for a ball. He kept doing like the chase down and poke the ball out from behind and getting steals for his team. His energy level was off the charts. He had a smile on his face. He was competing. He was fighting through screens. He had the jam tip off the De'Aaron Fox miss, but again, he stole the ball. He fired it ahead to De'Aaron Fox. Fox missed a layup and he flew in. And all of a sudden, he looked like he had his bounce back. And so I don't know what it was. I don't, it very well could have been like losing the starting job, or knowing that he was probably not going to be the starter earlier than we knew he wasn't going to be the starter. Maybe that's what impacted him. But overall, like this is kind of the way it had to play out because he didn't play well enough to just outright take the job. And you can't just discredit Jordan McLaughlin and who he is as a player too. He's a guy who can bring the ball up. He's super fast with the ball. He's a natural point guard where Keon isn't. It allows when he's in the game, it allows Malik Monk not to bring the ball up and for him to go run and set a bunch of, come off of motion before the ball gets across half court and already have sort of the offense flowing before the ball's brought up. And Keon's going to have to be the guy who does that. And if not, then Jordan McLaughlin is going to get minutes, or other people will have to take the ball up. And that's really not the design of what they're trying to do. So I get it, but I still think that Keon's a valuable member to this team. And I think he's in your top 8-man rotation at this point, and that's where he should be.
I think the common counter I heard to a lot that a lot of people said to the like he didn't play well in preseason, which I agree with for what it's worth, was that the larger sample is what he did last season, where he was pretty efficient, and I understand that, but I think that if it was a motivation tactic potentially, or even if it wasn't, it seems to have probably motivated Keon a little bit. He played really well in those 2 games, and I think part of his game is having this like hunger and desire to do all the little things. That's what got him on the floor in the first place. When you're earning your spot still, that that's kind of your role. And I think that that's his specialty. So maybe this kind of resparked some of that. But I think it's good to have him back in this rotation, and you need him there because Mike Brown's been pretty transparent of trying to figure out what that's going to look like. And maybe that's 8, 9 guys. You don't want to cut it down one more than you even have to, I think. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult. Like it's a good problem to have that you have good players. I actually like just a random. I like when Doug McDermott comes in and everything he just like is ready to go and ready to shoot. Like every single time you step on the floor as an NBA player, you need to make an impression. And there certainly comes a point where you don't in your career, but like guys like Keon, guys like Doug McDermott, they do. They need to make those impressions. And I hope that whatever happened here, that Keon is more understanding that that's who he has to be every time he steps out on the court. And it's not that I think he just played so horrible in preseason that he doesn't deserve to be in the rotation or anything. But I also don't think that he stood out. Like if there's a starting job, just like anyone else, if there's a promotion out there and you know that you got to go put your best foot forward to get that promotion and you don't, you're not going to get the job. And it's unfortunate for Keon that, sort of this happened. But I also think, he's a smart player. He can get out there and really help this team kind of move forward. Um, we talked about the rotation. Are you guys at all surprised that it's been like 7-man rotation? I mean, like you can call it 7.5-man rotation for most of the games, but like most of these, like no one is getting to play, and the starters are playing, 38. We had a couple of 40s, a couple of 43s. Are you surprised, like out of the gate, or do you think that this is sort of the way it has to be when you have two guys and Kevin Herter and Trey Lyles that didn't go through training camp?
Well, and it's interesting because I know that keeps getting brought up, and there is something to that. I don't do mean to diminish it, but I'm going to diminish it because, in the sense that these guys know what it's like to play with Kevin Herter and Trey Lyles. Like they only really have a foreign substance and DeMar DeRozan and Jordan McLaughlin, and that's basically it. So and we've all seen DeRozan in terms of the offense. I mean, that's like a fish to water in my opinion. I mean, he looked from that first preseason game like he's picked it up. He's got a huge smile on his face, like he's having fun. Like that's what really stands out about him. Not only is he impactful, he's tremendously effective. They rely on him. They need him. And it's a little trouble. Like I think going back watching that Laker game, that 21-0 run, he wasn't on the floor for a great portion of that, was he? Because I know when it ballooned to 14, there was a timeout.
Wait, who's
Um,
this?
I was talking about DeRozan.
Oh, no, DeRozan was on the court in the beginning. The first 2 minutes of the 14-0 run,
Yeah.
DeRozan and Fox were both on the court.
At what point did he come out? He came out though, didn't he?
Mike called a timeout like
It
with
had been
like
14-0 run, I think.
yeah, 2:07 into the run. It was a little like 9:53 remaining or something. He called a timeout. He brought in Trey Lyles. He brought in Domantas Sabonis and Malik Monk, and pulled Fox and I think
I think
Fox, DeRozan,
DeRozan.
and
Yeah.
one other.
Well,
Yeah.
well, and what I'm trying to get to is we've seen, obviously the run that the Timberwolves made in the first game, the run that and look, these teams are going to make runs, but they were pretty substantial. I mean, they evaporated leads rather quickly, and DeRozan is like the blueprint of a run stopper. Like he can just get to the free throw line and stop your run, and they weren't doing that, so that was a little alarming. But in the overall sense of just minutes and everything, when Mike was talking about trying to shorten those minutes, getting into the rotation, getting deeper. I mean, he said that, but then the next day he didn't do it. And I think there's the logic to that is it's really difficult. Like he's so much of a coach that coaches on feel. I asked him about it the other day in terms of like you may have a card in front of you saying this is when we're going to do our subs and all that, but then it becomes so situational and in the moment of the game. But to that point, I think he just needs a 5-game sample size. And we're not talking preseason because they would only play basically halves of games. So really, I think you're going to really start to see this team get that, or especially Mike, get more of a feel for his team and more of a what he wants to do once he gets to that 5-game mark to where he truly has a sample size of what he wants to see. Because he's got individual challenges for a lot of these guys. He'll ask DeMar DeRozan to do things DeMar DeRozan normally doesn't do. And he takes to it. He's able to find results. I think even De'Aaron Fox for these first handful of games hasn't really kind of looked like De'Aaron Fox, but yet you get scoring outputs that are obviously promising. Struggled to shoot in that LA game, but you get the Portland and the Utahs of the world, and yeah, like Brenden said, these are teams that sometimes they wouldn't beat last year, but sometimes you need a slump buster, and it came in game 3 and 4 of the season, and they were able to do it. And kudos to them. It was a back-to-back. It was a home and away, and let's see what they can carry on these next 3 games on this road trip.
Yeah, I don't know who else I would want to see on like a nightly basis. I think Keon belongs in there, like we kind of talked about, but outside those starting 5, it's really Malik, who I think is going to make another good run at 6-man this year, and then Trey and Keon. After that, I think there's nightly cases for Jordan McLaughlin or sometimes Doug McDermott. But for the most part, those are the guys you can rely on. I think the point of that's who all the teammates are comfortable with and familiar with from their previous time here. I think that stands well. I mean, we knew that the depth was, specifically when it comes to forwards and wings, was kind of an issue with this team. And I think that's kind of bearing fruit so far. I think they put a lot of responsibility on Keegan Murray. Like one of you mentioned earlier, DeMar DeRozan is playing the 4 sometimes. I think that Trey Lyles has obviously filled that spot. And even early on, we've seen when Sabonis goes out that their offense has kind of struggled. I think that was sort of, if I'm remembering right, what lined up with that fourth quarter that the Lakers run was as well. Domas checks out. He plays typically the entire of the first and entire of the third, and then closing moments of second and fourth. And typically that first stretch where he comes out has been something that I've started to keep tabs on a little bit of how they go during that run, because I think the offense can get a little stagnant. Their best offensive rating is with Domas on the floor, 120.7. When he's off the floor, 95.2. That's the lowest on the team. And I think putting Trey at that 5 really helps, get some more spacing out there offensively. And obviously you're sacrificing something by not going with Alex on the defensive end. But I think you kind of got to lean into your strength, which should be an elite offense. So leaves Alex a little bit on the fringe of it as well. So to me, it makes sense why it's 8 guys. It's not the most ideal thing, but that's the roster I think that Mike Brown's dealing with.
Well,
Yeah.
look at the rebounding help too. Sorry, James. Look at the rebounding help. Like you go that Laker game, for example, DeRozan, who's being asked to do some things that, again, be playing power forward, he can't come out of that game with 0 rebounds. Like this team obviously has a huge need for an athletic power forward that stretches the floor. They don't grow on trees, but offer some rim protection, any of that. Their rebounding help is like non-existent, and they need Keegan Murray to be a 10 rebound kind of guy. And that's asking a lot. They need DeMar DeRozan to go out and get you 4 or 5 boards a game.
Yeah, and a couple of things. Number one, to get back to the 8-man rotation, I think one of the biggest things is that you had to get Kevin back in and find his rhythm, whether he's played with these guys or not, and whether they know where he is. Like him being on the court is one thing, and then the other thing is Trey Lyles. Trey Lyles does not look like Trey Lyles at all right now, and he's very frustrated. Like, I mean, we saw the jersey moment where he ripped his jersey off, which he
That was
said was because
impressive.
his jersey was too tight, which we had a good time with him in the locker room with that. But then he didn't look at all happy last night either. He's struggling to find his rhythm and to get back to the player he is. I do think that he provides like a tremendous amount of depth, and if he can play the center position and just pull guys away from the basket and shoot on them, the Kings are gonna like. He is probably the right answer for more minutes than having a guy like Alex Len. And I know you lose something defensively, but not a lot of teams in the league are going out there with 2 centers, 2 natural 7-foot centers. And you're going to face that. He's not 7 foot, but like when you go to Atlanta, you're going to have Clint Capella, and then they're going to hit you with a Kongwu, and he plays more like a natural center who stays around the basket. A Kongwu does, even though he's like 6'9". Kings are going to have to deal with that. And Sean, to your point, like we just keep saying this, that they need someone bigger, stronger. Like you lost 2 games this season very specifically because 2 6'8", 6'9", 250-pound dudes went off, and you didn't have an answer. And the Kings don't have an answer for big, like offensive minded forwards. And Keegan Murray can do his best, but one of the problems that you have is that Keegan Murray is defending those 2 guys. He's not getting rebounds.
Right.
And if you don't have him as your secondary rebounder, you're in trouble. And we heard nonstop the buzzword of camp outside of the rock climber dude, the Annapurna, and outside of him, what's his
Climbing
name?
together, James. Climbing together.
What's his name,
I
Brendan?
have no idea. I don't remember.
Not remember his
We've
name.
already forgotten his name, and he's
Mike Brown
incredible.
He's one
Mike
of
Brown
like
would be so.
he's the only American to climb the however many highest mountains
I think
without
11,
oxygen or something. Yeah.
the top 11 peaks,
He
whatever.
called
it
him
is.
the Michael Jordan of rock climbing.
He
or mountain
did. Well,
climbing.
and then, changed to Larry
Then
Bird.
Larry Bird.
Yeah.
Well,
The other part,
he
he'd
could be
so
the LeBron
disappointed
James of something, but I don't know.
because this is still being referenced quite a bit. Like it's a drinking game. Like you take a shot every time Mike Brown references this climbing together Annapurna or the gentleman's name, and I can't remember the gentleman.
Yeah.
Jim something, was it Jim? I don't know.
No, it's
Or
not.
if we get to offensive rebounds or paint touches, those should probably go on the bingo card. There's a couple.
Spray, the
Yep.
spray
Hot
3,
guys?
the hot guys, spray the hot guys. Yeah, We've heard all of this, right? Where were we going with this? Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know.
My point was that like the Kings keep running up against the same problem that they don't have anyone who can defend a LeBron James or Julius Randle or a Zion Williamson, and they're going to run into these guys again and again, and I don't know what they're going to do because again, when Keegan Murray is forced to defend these guys, he's not getting any rebounds. And the other point I was going to the other buzzword of throughout camp is crash zone.
Yeah.
This team has been ass at offensive rebound. They're 30th in the league right now at offensive rebounding, and that's after they had 9 in back-to-back games. All we kept hearing about was how they're going to fly into the crash zone. They're going to focus on offensive rebounding, and either they're not good at it or they just don't have the players that can do it. And so that's a whole nother thing. Like it's non-existent. They're not good at it. I mean,
Yeah.
strangely enough, the team point of emphasis was this. And the one thing that they're doing extremely well for some reason is shooting free throws. They're the worst free throw
Well,
shooting team in the league last year. And now all of a sudden they're geniuses at the line.
DeMar DeRozan. That's DeMar DeRozan. And by the way, the mountain climber was Ed Viesturs. I think I'm saying
Ed
that right.
Viesturs. That's right.
Viesturs. Ed
Yes.
Viesturs. So that'll be fun.
Ed
Yeah, I mean
Viesturs.
that's DeMar DeRozan effect. Free throws are going to go up. It's one of the reasons it killed them in games so many times last year. They've lost. I mean, we could count them. It's probably easily 5 off the top of your head. If they just hit free throws, they would have won games. So, yeah, they've got some. Look, there's a roster imbalance, but they're making the best of it. And some could argue that Mike should go in different directions. Some could argue, and certainly social media is the toxic wasteland of all these theories where, all these GMs come out and coaches come out and say, well, this guy needs to play and this guy needs to play. And they might, some might be wrong, some may not be wrong, but they're going to stick with what got them here, the continuity of this team. And they're trying to piece in added pieces here. And it's, again, the only guy that really they have on that roster that can do what they need in theory on the roster is Isaac Jones. And can you really trust Isaac Jones as a rookie who doesn't have really that much of a taste of NBA basketball yet and is in that maybe category? And I think that's one of the people that Mike Brown has alluded to when he says, how do I go from a maybe to a yes and trust his gut and bring him in? Keon Ellis used to be a maybe, and didn't take him that long to become a rotational player. So just using him as an example, you might see an Isaac Jones later on, but the main part is they just need help. They have to find it. It's going to be a collective effort from these guys. And 4 games into the season, I think once you have, 5th game, 6th game, 10 at most, you get a little bit more comfortable in what your rotations are. And so many of these guys off the bench are not everyday players.
Has stood out that Isaac has been the one two-way technically available for all these games, and I think he's the one we've heard encouraging things about throughout training camp, preseason, and stuff. So I've kind of been, keeping an eye a little bit to see if he could get some run here and there. But I think on the rebounding, a lot of it again comes back to the size, which I think is going to be an issue with this team. Like it stood out in pregame, Mike Brown talking about how big of a team Portland is, and I never really thought of them as like a large team necessarily. But you got Denny, you got Jeremy Grant, you got DeAndre Ayton, Donovan Clegan is a ginormous.
There we go.
MFer. He's huge. Even just like walking past him. I don't know if you guys were near him pregame. Walk past him like, oh my God, that's a ginormous human. Even like Aiton's huge, down. But
he's slimmed down. Like he's not as big. Like I think he's still every bit of 265, but I think he was up to 290 in college.
He's listed at 280 on their media trip.
It's crazy. Yeah.
7'2", 7'3", 280. We haven't seen Zach Edey yet, who makes him look like a little kid.
Right. But I think every team that they've gone against, like I keep thinking, oh, this is a big team. Now they're playing another big team. And it's like, well, a lot of NBA teams are just pretty big. Even Utah, Lauri Markkanen running at the 4, and they got Walker Kessler right next to him. They got Kyle Filipowski sitting there. If they didn't have that unfortunate, which by the way, wishing the best for Taylor Hendricks. That was an insane injury.
That was god awful.
It's like all 4 teams so far, I've found myself being like, oh, they're playing a big team today. And I think the theme is, no, the Kings are just a small team. They're running DeRozan at the 4. They're running sometimes Malik Monk or Keon Ellis, whichever one you want to call it, is playing the 3. Kevin Huerter at the 3. Like they're going to have these issues, and it's going to show up in some aspects throughout the whole season. but you try to use it a little bit of a positive on the offensive end.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to be able to do smoke and mirrors, and you're going to be able to use your speed and like basketball IQ, and I would also say like really, really high level. Like this is like their players are very, very high level. Like you know what I mean? Eh, some tall guys are like unbelievably skilled, but the Kings are one of the highest skilled teams that you're going to run into. Like, and that's partially because they're only running 8 guys out there, 9 guys out there, and not going deeper into, their bench of guys who don't know how to play basketball all that well and are still growing into who they're going to be and stuff. But I think that's how the Kings are going to try to get through it. But they're still going to run into all kinds of trouble with anyone who has a big, strong, offensive-minded player. And you just hope you don't run into too many of them. And even on this road trip, there's not a lot of those guys. Like Bam Adebayo is not a guy who should be busting the Kings up for 30 something points. Although I think he's done that before.
He's capable. He's definitely capable of it.
He's capable, but he's not really the type of player where he's just an offensive weapon. He's more of a really great defensive player with an all-around game than he is just like an offensive guy. So, but they're gonna have to figure it out. They're gonna have to face a lot of these teams, or they're gonna have to make a trade. They're gonna have to go get somebody,
Yeah.
and that's where it becomes a little more complicated, right?
The other thing that's worth pointing out, just in the event somebody is listening to us talk and maybe they didn't happen to see the Utah game too, but what would it look like? And I know the Kings trounced the Jazz. I mean, that's fine, but like Markkanen also went out of that game. Their best player, Lauri Markkanen, goes out of that game with like a lower back thing, I think it was, or I don't remember what it was.
He had
but
back
it was,
spasms.
yeah. I mean, like theoretically, if that doesn't happen, how different does that game look? So, just objectively speaking, again, speaking to the point that they were playing some two pretty bad teams and they find their mojo again, hopefully. You also take into account that Markkanen wasn't there. So
I
at
thought
least for half of
Markkanen
it.
looked like ass when he did play.
Yeah, he didn't play great, but I think
He
he was
wasn't
also
moving
battling.
well.
Battling the back, but yeah, that's I don't know.
Yeah. He didn't look great, but I would just go back to the game before where, I think the Kings made a guy like Jeremy Grant look horrible. Like Jeremy Grant did not play well at all. I know he's your favorite player, Sean, but yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, he had 7 points or whatever, like, and he took a bunch of shots. He had 8
Bad
rebounds,
shots too.
which was shocking. But
that I pointed out to you, didn't I? I go, didn't think I'd see this. He had more rebounds than he had points.
yeah,
And I was blown away by that.
yeah, he did not play
Grant, Karl Anthony Towns, just some of Sean's favorites.
Yeah.
Probably sounds very, very talented player. But
Hey, with
can't play for him.
Markkanen out of the game, like John Collins tore up the Kings, and it's the same exact thing. A 6'9" offensive minded, like strong dude. He looks good, and he looks like he's gained some weight. Like he's not like the thin dude he was his first couple of years in the league. I still wouldn't touch his. I think he's owed $26 million next year. I wouldn't touch that contract. But anyway. Let's get into what's about to happen next. The Kings are on a 4-game road trip. I think I'd start with this. How much do you think how much do you think they needed this, like a 8-day trip away to bond and sort of get on the same page? Because I think it could actually really be helpful for this team.
I think it's like you mentioned, a time to kind of get on the same page. It's a very weird trip. The fact they're going, what is it, Atlanta, Toronto, Miami, and I overheard, I think it was like Trey Lyles talking about how this is such a backwards trip. It really should stay south.
And to that point, Atlanta and Toronto are back to back, and you got to go through customs and all that stuff. Like you almost want to start with Toronto and then go south, but you're going to go south, north, south again. It's just wild, bonkers.
8,000 plus miles. Like, what are they doing? What is it? Who did that? I mean, I looked. The trip from Atlanta to Toronto is like 980 miles in the air, and Miami's lower on the way back. So we're talking over 8,000 miles overall in the trip. It just schedule makers suck, man. It just doesn't seem. Come on, it could have been very simple. You could have had the 2 games down, you'll play Atlanta and Miami, and then flown up to Toronto, or you could have started in Toronto and came down and played the other 2 games, and it would have saved a ton of miles on that 2,000 miles on the trip.
But
I'm like,
for the people who don't know, we're just griping for sake of gripe. But like there's arena availability, there's all kinds of things that play a factor, and these computers spit out these possibilities, and this is how they came about. Every team gets some pretty crazy ones, but I think this is one of the more crazy back-to-back scenarios that I've seen in a road trip where you have to go back to Miami later on. That's wild.
well, go ahead, Brenden.
Crap scheduling, but for the most part, you have again a couple games in front of you that should be obtainable. Like Atlanta's not a slouch. I don't think either of Miami is necessarily either, even though they're not off to a great start. But you should be able to take care of some business here, knock off some teams that you won't have to see again for a while. I think they got Toronto pretty quickly again after they come back, and it'll be done with that series early. But for the most part, it's a little bit of some bonding time with a new group. DeRozan talked about in his media tour, book tour before the year, how he always makes sure to embrace some of the younger guys. I'd imagine they'll be going out a bit as a team and kind of get some of that off-court chemistry with working DeMar in there. But for the most part, I think it's just, it could have been home, it could have been road. It's just they got to get some reps. Mike Brown's got to get a better feel for his rotation here. But I think the further we go into this season, I would imagine that the more clear things will be. From last episode, we were talking about what's the identity of this team, and I think that's still kind of TBD.
Yeah, and I'll also add, as much as I think the schedule is not great, the Lakers were on the second night of a back-to-back. Portland was on the second night of a back-to-back. Utah was on the second night of a back-to-back. Atlanta is not, but I think they play tonight, and then they play the Kings on Friday, so they actually have a game before the Kings. And then Toronto is also on the second night of the back-to-back when the Kings play them. So there are some pluses hiding within the schedule that should be at least a little bit of an advantage for the Kings. Let's get to the business of basketball.
Well, that was different.
It was. I did not have the. I've been talking all day.
Brenden has also let us down.
He has.
Well, Sean, you've been letting us down since the inception of this pod, so
Totally.
no big deal.
Totally.
And Brendan's not alone in the room, Sean. You don't know this, but Brenden.
Oh,
so I don't think
we have company. We have a guest.
Brendan's in the other room. Yeah.
Oh, she left and went in the other room.
Yeah, other room. It was
Did
tired
the dog
of
leave
you
too?
Guys. Dog did disappear somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, he did
have
to
meet this guest.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
There we go.
We'll get there.
But I don't think Brenden was going to make a noise in front of a guest.
Ashamed. I'm not ashamed. I just let you, turn it in a different direction, and you gotta make it more rare. It's like we were at the point where people were expecting it, and that's lame. The whole fun is that it catches you off guard. So gotta get people back on their toes, guys.
You turned it into a bit. I was curious because this is our Halloween episode, so I was curious what you might come up with.
Well, actually, Sean, we talked about this a little bit before you got here. Next episode will be our Halloween episode, for what it's worth.
Well, how
at least my
Halloween
after
Halloween.
Don't worry about it, first of all, and mind your business. And we'll see you next episode.
Mind your business, Sean.
Maybe.
Yeah. All right. Let's start over. Let's get to the business of basketball. Yes.
There you go.
And we're back.
What did your guest look at you? What was their expression?
Oh, it's like it's not atypical.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just be making noises,
All right. So let's get to this. Sacramento Kings, they've got 3 more games on this road trip. How do you think they fare? You've got Atlanta, who out of nowhere is beat up. Like Bogdanovich has undergone another procedure. I'm not sure what that procedure is about, but he's out. I think Dyson Daniels got banged up and is probably out for the game. Maybe I'm wrong there, but then you go to Toronto. Scotty Barnes is definitely out and will miss both of these 2 games against the Kings. Even when they get back, he broke his eye orbit. And then you finish off with Miami, where you have a day in Miami before, which is probably not a great thing. But where are you guys at? What do you think? Do they take care of business? Is this a trip that you feel like they can be highly successful coming back from?
I like their chances against Atlanta very much so. I know Atlanta as they currently stand are 2-2. Like you mentioned, they're going to play before they host Sacramento, but I don't like their team with some of the absences that they have. I didn't like their team really to begin with. So I feel confident about that game. Toronto be different. I mean, look, that's DeRozan. Every time he's going up to Toronto, it's kind of special. Don't know what to expect there. I'll be honest, I haven't seen much of the Raptors. And the Heat have been a team that just kind of stumbled, and they might be close to blowing it up. Maybe, I don't know. I don't feel good about what their future is looking like. So, yeah, if you can go 2-1, I think that's going to be, you'll be thrilled with that. That makes for a 500 road trip. But, or actually I'd make a 3-1 road trip, right? Yeah. Cause they
Yeah.
won in Utah. So yeah, I think you can go 2-1, you'd feel pretty good about it. But, yeah, I'm real confident that they'll beat Atlanta. The other two are a little bit of a toss up for me.
Brenden?
Yeah, I feel kind of the same. I would say 2-1. I think Toronto should be a win, and I would take one of Miami or Atlanta. I have a little bit of, they're going to be in Atlanta for 2 days before. They're going to be in
Yep.
Miami for 1 day before. That
Yep.
makes me think, we'll see about one of those. What may happen there, but Atlanta is actually 65-57 against Washington right now. They got a lead at halftime. I am kind of with Sean there. I don't think that team has looked amazing. I think that they're kind of doing this weird juggling, almost two timelines sort of thing. And I think the Kings should be able to take care of business there. There's not this overwhelming size necessarily. Like even tonight, I mean, it's okay. But David Roddy, Jalen Johnson, Clint Capella, that's okay size. It's not the most skilled outside of Jalen Johnson, I would say. And you got Keegan Murray as an option there. Yeah, I mean, I think you should be able to take care of business. These are teams you should be able to score against, even if some of them have better defenses than others. I think for the most part, it's not letting, for no reason, Risa Shea all of a sudden has a 25 ball, or something like that. Or you see Jaime Jaquez have a big night in Miami. I think if they can contain these guys on the defensive end that are not the most versatile when it comes to their own creation, that they should be able to win 2 out of these next 3, come home with a 3-1 trip.
Yeah, I'm gonna like my prediction would be that they beat Atlanta, and they beat Toronto, and they head to Miami with a 3-game win streak, or well, actually, it'd be a 4-game win streak, but a 3-0 road trip to start, and then I think it's going to be a toss up. All bets are off because I think the Kings are going to be motivated to win before coming home there. Toronto's lineup is very odd. Davion Mitchell is starting at the point right now. Grady Dick at the 2, like, and I think RJ Barrett at the 3, Jakob Poeltl at the 4, at the 5. I don't know who's starting at the 4 for them. But without Scotty Barnes, they're not all that dangerous in my mind. And Atlanta, while they're playing well right now tonight, I don't know if they're going to be able to hold on to that game. And either way, I think that the Kings match up well against them. And for that matter, De'Aaron Fox has always played well against Trae Young. He seems to get up against Trae Young. I think he had his first triple-double against Atlanta. It's just one of those teams that he likes to go at. So we'll see.
I think Fox has been kind of slow to start this year. I think that he has some finger wrap going on that I think he told G-Man after the game yesterday. Let me make sure I have this right. That essentially, since there's no break, it's going to be something that he's dealing with all year long. He said, unless we get a month off at some point, it's going to be here to stay. In a finger issue that he's had going on that we didn't quite get the specifics to.
Pinky and the ring finger are taped together, I believe.
Yeah.
What it is. But
so did he damage the pinky or the ring finger?
He's said that it's fine, that it's not any kind of interference. And then I think that was really before he started playing some games. And then maybe there might be some interference there or some adjustment he has to make. But, his handle seems fine. I know the turnovers were up. I think they've got a little bit better. They were fantastic. They were great in the turnover department in Utah last night. But he struggled with turnovers in LA for sure. But maybe it's a shot thing, but I feel like his handle's fine.
All right. So we're all feeling 3-1 at a minimum.
Well, no, I mean, I don't know. The one thing that gives me pause too is Miami, in the sense that I know it's only, again, small sample size. They're playing right now. They've only played 3 games. They were 2-1, but like they don't score.
Mm.
They don't score at all. I think I haven't looked at the ranks, but I think it's like the either dead last or close to it. Brendan might have it in front of him, but like it's that to me, you have to be able to absolutely capitalize because you're a team that comes in and has this potent offense, and you should be able to take care of business. Now, look, they're both these teams. Well, especially with Miami, they get by on physicality and defense, but you got to score. You got to just blow them out. You just have to not blow them out, but just run them out the gym and just continue to score on them.
Yeah, they're 29th in the league at 105.7 points per game, but they're third in the league at defense, well,
Yeah.
points allowed at 106.7. Their offensive rating is 19th. Their defensive rating is 9th. I think the Kings' defensive rating is actually higher than is actually better.
The
The
Kings
Kings
are
are,
8th.
yeah, the Kings are 8th at like 108.4 or something, right?
But also bear in mind too, look at the last 2 wins. When you score, when you have that's going to be a very jaded type of kind of loaded number there. So
Yeah, I know we saw that stat. Like, this is the first time. Well, okay, it's not really the first time, but technically it's the first time in the Mike Brown era that the Kings have held teams under 100 in back-to-back games. It did happen last year, the final game of the season, and then against the Warriors in the play-in game. But play-in games technically like don't exist; they don't count. That's the only other time. But I would say 2 years ago, when the Kings were like the fun 2022-23 team, they gave up 100 points almost every game, and it started out like they had a huge streak to begin the season where they were giving up 100 like nonstop. Um, I think it was something like 5 times, 4 or 5 times the entire season where they didn't give up 100 in a game.
Yeah. And, some of these have to do with obviously their games against the Kings, but Utah, worst offensive rating in the league by far, actually, 100.2, and this is 4 games. 29th is Portland, 106.2, which again, both those include games against the Kings. So credit to them for being part of the reason that they're down here. But you got Toronto still sitting at 27th, and this is offensive rating. And then who was I looking for? Miami in here. Sitting at 19th. You mentioned their points per game in there as well. So, like I said, I mean, I think the defense that you should be able to score against these guys, just don't let bad offenses get going for no good reason.
Yeah, I just looked the 2022-23 season. The Kings allowed over 100 points per game the first 20 games of the season, and only 4 times over 100 points. Yeah, only 4 times the entire season did they hold a team under 100 points.
Hmm.
That's it. Yeah.
can
So, yeah.
we spend a second talking about Domantas Sabonis? Because
Sure.
that dude has been really good. I mean, like have we seen a better stretch? I mean, granted, like we've seen triple doubles, we've seen double doubles, but think of him in terms of a scoring stretch, especially. And that makes me very happy to see that because I'm always a guy that thinks he needs to get 20 because so much of his points come so easily, and he's doing it right now, and he's continuing to play the way he plays. Um, I don't know. I've been very, very impressed with his start of the season, especially for a guy who I'm anticipating he's going to get beat up a lot this year, just because they don't have a lot of help for him. So I like this strong start to the season from him, and I think he's been sensational.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Whatever work he did in the offseason, and it's been the last 2 off seasons where he spent like a tremendous amount of time with Doug and with Leandro Barbosa. Um, what they've done there to take the hesitation out of his game, to speed up his thought process is crazy because that's what it looks like it is. Like, there's no hesitation on the 3-point shot. Sure, has he like faked a couple and then not? No. Like, he's like he's just like moving at the speed of sound at all the time. And it's very strange to see a player go from someone who's always pass first to all of a sudden he's not. And that's okay. Like, I think the Kings are better off with him scoring like this. And Sean, it's funny because you and my partner at ESPN 1320, Kyle Madsen, you guys are on the same page. You always want him scoring more. You want him at 22 points a game or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think he's going to wander into 22, 23, 24 points per game this season. I think that's who he is out of nowhere. And if he can keep this up where, again, the second he gets the ball in the post, he's going. The second he gets the ball in the perimeter, you can see like there's no indecision. There's no indecision on the 17-foot jumper he took in the game yesterday. He saw DeRozan cut down. He faked the pass to DeRozan, pulled up, nailed the jumper. So, man, I think you're right. He's playing out of his mind. The assist numbers are down, but that's a product of the Kings not hitting any shots in the first couple of games, and then DeMar DeRozan being more of a you don't get assists of a lot of his the passes that go to him, but I think he's been
Well,
tremendous.
and also, and Domas right there with it. Domas looking to score. Like he's taking
Yeah.
advantage of opportunities that are there. And I think I think everyone knows it's like, well, okay, you got to defend Sabonis, but you have to worry about him as a playmaker more so than a scorer. And he ends up passing up a lot of moments where he can just find easy buckets. And
You want to hear
so
something
anyway,
crazy, Sean?
yeah,
He's last season 13 shots per game. This season 13.3 shots per game. The difference
mm,
is he went from making 0.4 threes per game to 1.5. So again, that's 0.3 threes per game is 1.2 points versus 4.5 for 1.5 makes per game. And then the other thing he's doing, he's gone
it's
up,
efficiency.
1.2 free throw makes per game, and he's shooting 76% from the line. So he went from 5.1 free throw attempts to 6.3. Those two stats right there, one of the difference in the 3-point shot from last season is 3.7. The difference in the free throw makes this season is 1.2. So that's 4.9. He's literally averaging 4.9 more points per game this season at 24-3 versus 19.4 last year. So,
I mean, I think he's leading the team in scoring right now, 24.3 a game. And I would say that he's doing it all within the flow, too. Like Sean mentioned, and everybody sees, I mean, he's clearly a pass first guy, and that seems to be his preference. But even if you just, I feel like anybody can sit there and theorize after they get DeRozan. It's like, all right, how are you going to try to defend these guys? And it's like, well, don't let Sabonis pick you apart with his passing. If he's going to be enabling everybody else, let's try to take away his playmaking. And he is still within the flow of the offense, which I think is a huge thing for the Kings, just maintaining that freelance style that they have going on, just finding his moments. And I think he's doing them quicker. Like last year and really his whole career, one thing that's drove me insane is the amount of pump fakes. Like I get it, and they have the efficiency at times. I think more than anything, it just drives me a little crazy, but I realize it's effective. But a lot of times it's like so many pump fakes before he finally gets to his move. It feels like they're kind of quicker decisions throughout the course of these early games this year. And I do want to see it kept up, though. I felt like going into last year, there was all the talk about how the Warriors defended him and he's going to have to shoot more. And I feel like we saw that a little bit at the beginning of last year. Now, this I would say is on another level than that, but it tailed off as the year went on last season. So let's see it maintained. But I think it's a trend in the right direction for sure.
Brenden, not a fan of pump fakes. So buckle up, DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah.
he's
He's
gonna
buckle
hear
up,
one.
Trey Lyles.
Yeah,
Trey has become great because when he got traded from Detroit, everybody's like, "Oh my God, it's the pump fake king. He's going to pump fake wide open shots," and he's been great.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. I want to bring up one last thing. Did you guys notice Scoot Henderson falls down all the time? Like,
well, hold on. So does Jordan McLaughlin. Remember in that same game, I looked
that's
back.
true.
I can't remember who I was talking about. I was like, he fell down 4 times in a minute of action. He's
Yeah.
all over the place. I mean, it was odd, but it's all over the place. But
Yeah, it's
Scoot's also
interesting.
coming off the bench. I think that's probably the right move at the moment for them. Just
He's got a lot of work to do.
he's not been good. So
He's got a lot of work to do.
and
Okay.
there's opportunity aplenty for him. I mean, my goodness, go out there and should
Yeah,
be
you
able to
do
feast.
anything, you can stand out on that team. I don't know. The Simon thing is weird. He did not look good at all against the Kings, and a lot of complaining, a lot of he didn't look good at all. Like that team's a mess. We'll see how they look down the road. But okay, let's finish this thing up. What do we got for final thoughts? Brenden, what do you got?
Well, the part that I'm always the most entertaining for. I really hope the Yankees pull out another game here. Those maniacs that pulled the ball out of Mookie's glove need to
Wild.
not be going to another game because what the hell are you doing? I hope the
Can I
Yankees
can
win
I
this
can I
game.
stop you real quick on that?
Yeah.
Did you see that those? I don't know if it was one or both of them. They're like friends of Rob Gronkowski from college or something, college buddies. So that
Yeah,
kind of,
I heard that.
yeah, kind of makes
And they
sense.
also went out and said that that was intentional and that's what they're there for. They're there to guard that line and they're idiots. They need to be
How are you
banned.
allowed back in the building?
Yeah, they need to
Seriously.
be banned. If somebody grabbed an NBA player in the middle of something, someone goes to
Well,
save a ball out of bounds and they hold on to him or something, you're getting tossed.
here's the thing. Like, I'm not saying ban them, but like, how did they not get kicked out of the game?
Oh no, they did.
They did? Okay. I didn't
But
know if
they
they had just
refunded their
moved
money.
them or whatever. Yeah, that's okay. That's just crazy to me.
All right, Brendan, go ahead. Sorry. We
Sorry.
interrupted your
We
I
did.
mean, no, that's really it. I got a Red Sox on that I turned backwards just so Frankie wouldn't cuss me out today, and because big Yankees guy, and I am actively rooting for the Yankees for what it's worth. That's really all I got. Going to turn that on after this. Excited basketball's back. I think it's been a pretty exciting first week of the season or so. A few more injuries than I think would obviously be ideal. And some scary one. That Taylor Hendricks one. I'm sorry to mention it again, but that was
Stop.
insanity. Watching
Stop.
that, like
The
he just
weird thing is he just ran down to the end of the court, stepped, and his leg turned into a goddamn noodle. What in the world?
It accordioned.
Oh
Oops.
my gosh, it was horrible. He a full blown dislocated ankle. Oh, oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's bad.
But yeah, that's
That
all I
was
got. That
bad.
was my attempt at not saying I have nothing going on and just spewing random crap that's at the top of my head. So
Have
final
you seen
thoughts.
any movies or TV shows?
No
Come
chance.
on, man.
No. I actually
Aw.
realized I still have to finish watching Starting Five. I'm only 2 episodes into that still. I still have to finish watching the Menendez brothers, like the
What is it?
No,
actual
you don't
doc
have to watch it. You don't have
and
to watch it. We
the
all know
live
what
action
happened.
or whatever. Yeah. No, I got to catch up. Haven't watched anything recently.
Sean, what do you got? Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Moving sucks. Not a fan of moving at all. As I sit in this now has become a dark room.
I just want to die living here at this house. I don't I don't want to ever move again. They can just
Yeah.
wheel me out when I'm gone.
Yeah, it's wild. I too am rooting hardcore for the Yankees because it's always my hatred for any. I do not. There's only one team I hate, and it's the Los Angeles Dodgers. But that said, I'm the type of Giants fan who's very level-headed and respectful because the Dodgers have been the best team in baseball for almost a decade now, and so I do hate watch them as much as I root against them. I do admire what they've done. I still don't understand how Dave Roberts has a job. But if he wins this World Series, he will definitely shut critics like myself up for at least another year or two. But yeah, I am rooting hardcore for the Yankees. Sacramento's Aaron Judge, Linden native, but born in Sac. So he's, as we record this,
Been
finally
horrible.
went deep in this series. So
He hit a
that's good.
homer. He and
Yeah.
Jazz back to back.
What?
That's pretty wild. So yeah, rooting for them. And the other part is that because it is Halloween, I had a fun moment with the Kings, as I like to do some of these little features and getting their Halloween memories, but also using it as a tool to segue into De'Aaron Fox's Halloween party that has usually it's kind of been this annual thing, although they didn't do it last year, as he told me. But they were all really fun to deal with, and so I put a nice montage of them together, and you'll be able to kind of see that tomorrow, Halloween. I know if you're watching Fox 40 tonight, as we record this on Wednesday, it'll be on our 10 o'clock newscast, but the longer version will be online, and it's funny, man. And Jay Triano, you can watch everyone loved his costume. Everyone loved his costume. I think you can piece it together. There was only if somebody identified Jay Triano as having the best costume, there was one person who didn't want to say what the costume was, but said what the costume, or didn't want to say who the person was, said what the costume was. You can put the pieces together. It is hysterical. I wish we had photographic evidence, but then again, no, I don't. So I think people will enjoy it.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Have fun Halloween. I went to a Halloween party. I dressed up as myself because I was moving and had to work, but people are festive and it was fun.
Yeah. You guys should tune in tomorrow where me and Kyle are dressing up for on the Insiders. Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
James is going to go as Kevin Huerter.
No,
No,
I'm not. We
False.
thought about doing Monty and Wes because we could pull that one off.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Especially, we just get a couple of sweater vests. I mean,
No, don't do
poofy
that.
Poofy vest. Yeah, we're not going to. Yeah, but we have Halloween costumes for tomorrow. Let's see. Final thoughts from James. Be safe on Halloween. Vote, please.
Oh
Vote.
yeah. Hey, who are you voting for? No, I'm just kidding.
We're not doing that.
but-
We're a political free zone here. But please get out and vote, everybody. It's your duty, and this is probably the most important election.
What a wild time.
This is like, I just can't wait for it to be over. And then I don't feel like it will be over, but I really can't wait for it to be over. I'm so tired of the commercials. So tired of the commercials. Just brutal. So yeah, but
Insanity.
get out and vote.
Last
Go
thing
ahead.
I'll say, Nick Bosa, if you're gonna wear it, talk about it, dude. Like the fact that he wouldn't speak about his little whatever. We don't need to go
Yeah,
into it.
I'm with you. But I've had to shut down the chatty house because people are calling each other Nazis in chatty house. Like,
Oh boy.
like we're playing, like we're banning people left and right and like yelling at people on breaks and stuff. It's just wild. So, we all have to get along after this. So, just keep that in the back of your head. Don't burn any bridges. Yeah. So,
literally.
yeah, or figure. Yeah, don't burn anything at this point. It's like out of control. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this edition of the Kingsby podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back, I don't know, either later this week or we'll be back early next week. Whatever. We'll be back soon. And we'll, I don't know. We'll try to dissect what happened in these next 2 or 3 Sacramento Kings road games. So for Fox 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. I'm James Cam, your Kings Insider for ESPN 1320, the Kings Beat. See you guys soon.
Bye-bye.